Today is Transfiguration Sunday. This is not a word in common usage today. It seems to be confined to the language used for an event that occurred in today's Gospel reading, where the true nature of Jesus is revealed to his three closest disciples, Peter, James, and John. Basically, it means a complete change of form or appearance into a more beautiful or spiritual state. It might also be applied to our first reading from 2 Kings, chapters 2, 1 to 12, where Elijah is taken up to heaven in a chariot. It is witnessed by his most faithful follower, Elisha, who asks the soon-to-ascend Elijah for a double portion of his cloak, which is both a gift and an obligation. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." And Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take him?" And still he was silent. Then Elijah said to him, 50 men of the company of prophets also went with him and stood at some distance from them as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted to one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I'm taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in the whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father! The chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in 2 pieces. You may have noticed that Elijah threw his whole cloak to Elisha in this picture as he was carried off by the heavenly chariot. Now let us go to the Gospel of Mark, the story of the Transfiguration, the first one. It's from Mark chapter 9, 2 to 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and led them up to a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth can bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He really did not know what to say, for they were absolutely terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. Wow. What a spectacular event, seen by only 3 disciples. I'm sure their telling of it was met with incredulity, as their words could not really begin to even describe what had happened to them alone. This is where the title of my homily, Transfiguration 2.0, comes in. It is such an important concept to be able to see through the earthly incarnation of the enfleshed Jesus to only 4 people: Elisha, Peter, James, and John, over a period of 3,000 years. I believe it is an invitation to each of us to see through this veil, not just those 4. I admit this may be seen as a tad enigmatic, so I'll give you 2 examples of how I encountered Transfiguration in the last couple of weeks. The first one was when Cheryl, my spouse, and I were driving to a quick lunch before heading home for our 3-day annual Pastors Institute. As we turned the corner to the restaurant, I saw a man and a dog standing on the opposite corner. The rather unkempt man was holding a large hand-lettered sign that read, "Mean people suck." As we processed to the nearby restaurant and went inside to place our orders, I kept thinking about the man, as car after car must have driven by his sign on the way to shopping for lunch. So I asked the cashier if they had gift cards and got one for $10. Card and a couple of $5 bills tucked in my pocket while Cheryl waited for our order. I went out to walk on the side of the busy road across gravel barriers to the deceptively near corner. When I finally got there without my cane and without falling down, I walked up to him and handed him the card so that they could eat. Then I reached into my pocket and handed him $10 as well. He looked at me, startled a bit by my seeming generosity, and said, "God bless you." And I replied the same. We were no longer strangers, but 2 human beings looking at each other through fully opened eyes by the simple blessing that we exchanged. We were both transfigured in that moment. No chariots, no Old Testament prophets, just 2 people connected not by their apparent differences, but through the heart. The second transfiguration was at the Disciples Conference Center in Newton, Iowa. The meeting hall was one of the first hearing loops Cheryl and I had installed over a decade ago. It would allow me to use my telecoil setting to sit anywhere I wanted to in the assembly space. All I had to do was just switch my cochlear implant setting to a telecoil, and the mic's feet would go directly to me wirelessly without all the extra background noise that would make it very difficult for me to hear. But as the saying goes, seeing is believing, or in my case, hearing is believing. Through the last 15 plus years, I had learned to be skeptical, even when I asked our regional minister if their loop was working. He reassured me it was, but when I switched on my setting to check it out, I heard nothing. I wasn't even surprised, since this had happened to me routinely over the years, but Cheryl, as usual, rushed to the rescue and went over to the sound booth and fixed it. Then, as I suspected, none of the short videos was captioned, which was bad enough, but then I heard yet again the devastating words, "Break into small groups in the room and discuss the questions." So no mic and multiple people talking at the same time. Hell for anyone who has hearing loss. By then, I was furious. How often have we been over this? Why are we hearing people so dense or inconsiderate? Then a friend, one of the moderators, spoke out to the whole audience. "If you have hearing loss, please go into the dining room where you can meet in a quieter space." So, looking around at my presumably normal hearing members of my small group, we all arose in concert and proceeded like ducklings out of the room to follow her to have a quieter meeting. It was then that I turned to the woman on my right side, who had not contributed at all to our previous attempts to communicate in the cacophony. And she finally started sharing to all of us that her hearing loss had made her hold back to herself in silence. Wow, another epiphany. My friend Kirsten knowing my hearing loss problems personally, was the first moderator to address the elephant in the room, the unheard voices of those with hearing loss, and actively move us forward to support us and lead us to the dining hall. The second, when the silent woman, when she could hear, transformed into an active and invaluable contributor to our group. She had been also transformed by their becoming not only aware of my own vocalized needs, but her as well. So the next time we needed to break into small groups, no new hearing allies got up even before, and we just marched off again to the dining hall. Transfigurations surround us. Sometimes it takes just a thought, a word, an action to keep through the gossamer and see the veil that keeps us from seeing them. As we bring this to a close, take a few moments to look at the following picture. At first glance, it seems to be a kitten sitting on an overturned kettle, both levitating a foot or so off the sidewalk. That would be a miracle. I find myself looking at the strings holding it up, but I couldn't find any. On closer examination, the kitten and the kettle were actually on the pavement, and the shadow was simply drawn on the tile in front of them. I actually personally do not know if the chariots of heaven descended to take up Elijah, or if the transfigure of Jesus actually happened the way Mark talks about it, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter to me if the kitten and the kettle are just a clever optical illusion. For me, the miracle of my own two encounters was that I was able to see beyond the optical illusion to the probably homeless man down on his luck, and the woman who did not participate because they did not tell us she had a hearing loss. The miracle, the transfigure, happened when I got up close and spoke the words that blew away the veil that separated us. Every day we have opportunities to see differently, not just to see what seems apparent and clear in front of us, the unity and love that binds all of us together. So happy Transfiguration Day, and a reminder, it isn't just one Sunday in the liturgical year, but every day if you have eyes to see.